In a dimly lit house, Marion, a sensitive and lonely teenage girl, sneaks into the dimly lit bedroom of her stepfather, Rémi, who sits alone at his desk. The house is silent except for the faint ticking of the clock and the hum of the city outside. Marion timidly approaches and says softly, "Marion, can you hold me for a moment? I can't sleep." Rémi looks up confused, his face a mixture of exhaustion and restraint. "Rémi, Marion, you know you shouldn't be here." He climbs into bed, curling up beside her. "Marion, I'm not a child anymore. You treat me like one." He spends more and more time out of the house just to breathe freely. But Marion is always waiting when he returns, smiling as though nothing is wrong. The tension coils tighter with every passing day. The evening had settled over the apartment like a velvet curtain, silent, thick, almost theatrical in its stillness. A thunderstorm rumbled softly in the distance, and the dim yellow lamps cast long shadows across the floor. Rémi sat alone in the living room, half focused on a book he wasn't reading. He was trying to find calm, any kind of distraction, but nothing held his attention anymore. Not music, not literature, not even silence. Then, he heard soft footsteps. Marion entered the room barefoot, her hair damp from the shower, wearing a long t-shirt that fell to her thighs. Her presence was like static in the air, innocent on the surface, but charged with unspoken tension. She walked up behind him and gently wrapped her arms around his shoulders. "Marion," softly, "I missed you today." Rémi stiffened. Rémi, I've been here all day. Marion whispers, That's not what I mean. He turned his head slightly, but she tightened her hold, her cheek now resting against his neck. Then, without warning, she leaned forward and kissed the back of his neck. So lightly it could have been mistaken for an accident. But it wasn't. Rémi stood up abruptly, causing her to stumble backward. Rémi, firmly. Marion, don't! She looked at him, eyes shining not with embarrassment, but with certainty. Marion, I love you. Not like a daughter, like more. Time seemed to freeze. Rémi's breath caught in his throat. He stared at her, face pale, eyes wide, not with disgust but fear. Fear of what she was saying, fear of what it stirred inside him. Rémi. No, Marion, you're confused. This isn't love. This is grief, loneliness, hormones. You're too young to understand. She stepped closer. Marion, stop treating me like a child. I know what I feel. You just won't let yourself feel it back. Rémi turned away, pacing, one hand clutching his forehead like it hurt. Rémi, you don't know what you're asking. Marion, I'm not asking. I'm telling you. He looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the little girl he met years ago. She had grown. She was tall, composed, with eyes that carried too much sadness for her age. But her youth was unmistakable. And dangerous, Rémi, voice rising. This can't happen. Marion, why not? Because someone told you it's wrong? Because it looks bad? Rémi, because it is wrong! He was shouting now, anger barely concealing panic. Marion didn't back away. Her face hardened. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Marion, I don't care what the world says. I care about you. I care that every night I fall asleep wishing I could feel your arms around me. Not like a parent, but like someone who loves me. She reached out, placed her hand on his chest. He grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but firmly, and held it between them, trembling. Rémi, barely audible. You're breaking something in me, Marion. Marion, then let it break. She leaned in and pressed her forehead to his. Her breath was warm. Her heart was racing, so was his. He closed his eyes, and for a moment too long, he didn't move. He didn't resist. He simply stood there, lost in the gravity between them. But then he tore himself away, breathing ragged, stepping back like she'd burned him. Rémi, no, this isn't happening. I'm your stepfather. I raised you. Marion, you lived in the same house. That's not the same as raising me. You were never really a father to me, not like that. Rémi. I was trying to be, Marion. Were you, or were you just lonely too? Rémi didn't answer. The room was quiet now, save for the sound of the storm picking up outside. Lightning lit the window for a split second, casting ghostly shadows on the wall. Marion took another step forward. Marion, I'm not a child anymore. I know what I'm doing. I know what I want. She gently touched his cheek with the back of her fingers. He didn't pull away, but he didn't lean into it either. He looked at her with eyes full of grief and conflict. Rémi, Marion, you think this is love because it feels intense, but real love, it's not just desire. It's not just comfort. It's time and pain and patience and boundaries. Marion, I'm willing to wait. Rémi, I'm not. She looked wounded. He walked past her toward the hallway, putting space between them. Rémi, go to your room. Please, I need to be alone. Marion stood there for a long moment, fists clenched at her sides, blinking back tears she didn't want him to see. Then she turned and walked away, silently, slowly. That night, Rémi locks his door for the first time. But on the other side of that door, he can hear the soft padding of her footsteps, pausing, waiting, hoping. He sits on the edge of his bed, his hands shaking. In the quiet, a faint whisper comes through the door. Marion, softly, "Good night, Rémi." He doesn't respond, but tears slip down his face. The silence between Marion and Rémi had grown heavier. The apartment, once tense with unspoken words and emotional glances, now felt as if it were holding its breath. Rémi knew he was losing control. Every day Marion's presence grew more intoxicating. Her eyes followed him with quiet devotion. Her smiles had ceased to be innocent. The line between fatherly care and dangerous intimacy had blurred beyond recognition. One night, after a quiet dinner where neither of them spoke more than a few words, Rémi sat alone in the living room, staring at an empty wine glass. He could feel Marion's presence in the hallway behind him, lingering just out of view, watching. He didn't turn around. Rémi, softly, almost to himself. This has to stop. The next morning, Rémi made a decision. He called Marion's biological father, someone she barely knew but who was legally still her guardian. He arranged for her to stay there just for a while, under the pretense that it would help her recover, regain balance.
Marion found out by accident. She overheard him on the phone. She confronted him as he stood by the kitchen sink, hands trembling. Marion, voice shaking. "You're sending me away?" Rémi, not meeting her eyes. "You need structure, time. This isn't healthy." Marion, "You mean we're not healthy?" Rémi, "Yes, that's what I mean." There was a long silence. Marion stared at him with a mixture of heartbreak and fury. Marion, coldly, "You think by sending me away those feelings will disappear?" Rémi didn't answer.
The day of her departure came with grey skies and light rain. At the train station, Marion stood with her small suitcase, hair damp from the drizzle, her coat too big for her frame. The platform was nearly empty save for a few commuters and a conductor checking his watch. The silence between Marion and Rémi had grown heavier. The apartment, once tense with unspoken words and emotional glances, now felt as if it were holding its breath. Rémi knew he was losing control. Every day Marion's presence grew more intoxicating. Her eyes followed him with quiet devotion. Her smiles had ceased to be innocent. The line between fatherly care and dangerous intimacy had blurred beyond recognition. One night, after a quiet dinner where neither of them spoke more than a few words, Rémi sat alone in the living room, staring at an empty wine glass. He could feel Marion's presence in the hallway behind him, lingering just out of view, watching. He didn't turn around. Rémi, softly, almost to himself. This has to stop. The next morning, Rémi made a decision. He called Marion's biological father, someone she barely knew but who was legally still her guardian. He arranged for her to stay there just for a while, under the pretense that it would help her recover, regain balance.
Marion found out by accident. She overheard him on the phone. She confronted him as he stood by the kitchen sink, hands trembling. Marion, voice shaking. "You're sending me away?" Rémi, not meeting her eyes. "You need structure, time. This isn't healthy." Marion, "You mean we're not healthy?" Rémi, "Yes, that's what I mean." There was a long silence. Marion stared at him with a mixture of heartbreak and fury. Marion, coldly, "You think by sending me away those feelings will disappear?" Rémi didn't answer.
The day of her departure came with grey skies and light rain. At the train station, Marion stood with her small suitcase, hair damp from the drizzle, her coat too big for her frame. The platform was nearly empty save for a few commuters and a conductor checking his watch. Rémi stood stiffly beside her. The space between them was wide, but their emotions were bleeding into the air around them. Marion, quietly, eyes searching his face. "Will you write to me?" Rémi, "You'll be busy, settling in." Marion, "That's not what I asked." He looked away. She took a step closer. Marion, "I don't want you to forget me." Rémi's throat tightened. He forced a bitter smile. Rémi, "How could I?" The train's horn echoed through the station. Time was slipping. Marion reached out, her hand brushing against his. Then with sudden boldness, she leaned forward, wrapped her arms around his neck, and pulled him into a kiss. It was not a child's kiss. It was fierce, desperate, aching with confusion and yearning. Rémi stood frozen. His body resisted, but his lips trembled, and for a heartbeat he kissed her back. It was brief, barely a moment, but it happened. And then he tore himself away, breathing hard, his face pale.
Rémi, hoarsely, "Go, please." Tears welled in Marion's eyes, but she didn't cry. She stepped onto the train, turning once before the door shut. Her eyes locked on his, burning with sadness, anger, and something deeper, something neither of them dared name.
The train pulled away. Rémi stood there long after it vanished. Back at the apartment, everything reminded him of her. The bedroom still smelled faintly of her shampoo. Her favorite book was still dog-eared on the nightstand. The couch pillow bore the shape of where she used to curl up. Rémi tried to work. He sat at the piano for hours, but his fingers refused to move. When he pressed the keys, the music came out lifeless, hollow. He stopped eating. The fridge remained untouched, dishes piled up in the sink. He ignored phone calls from friends, publishers, even Simone, the woman who had once flirted with him after a parent-teacher meeting. The world outside moved on, but inside Rémi everything had stopped. He sat in Marion's empty room one night staring at the ceiling, Rémi whispering to the shadows, "What have I done?"
He began to dream of her standing at the train station, arms outstretched, of her whispering that he was her only home.
He didn't tell anyone. He couldn't. Shame twisted around his guilt like ivy, but the ache in his chest wouldn't go away. He was unraveling. The once brilliant pianist, respected and poised, was now a ghost in his own life, haunted not by what he had done, but by what he had almost allowed to happen, and what part of him still wanted.
But back home, Marion notices the shift immediately.
She hears Rémi humming in the kitchen. He trims his beard. He starts playing the piano again, pieces she hasn't heard in months. Something inside her panics. Late one night she sits in the living room while Rémi reads. Marion, quietly, "You've changed." Rémi, without looking up. "Maybe I'm healing." She swallows her hurt and leans over the back of the couch, resting her chin on his shoulder. A familiar closeness, one he doesn't encourage, but doesn't reject. Marion, who is she? He finally looks at her. Rémi. Her name is Simone. She's kind, gentle, like your mother used to be. Marion recoils slightly. Marion. So that's it? You're replacing her? Rémi. No, I'm finding a way forward.
He steps in front of him, blocking his view. Marion, insistent. "You said you cared about me, was that a lie?" Rémi, pained. "I never lied, but caring for you and being with you, those are different things." Marion, "Not to me." She storms out, and the next day her behavior shifts dramatically. Marion's provocation. Marion begins dressing more provocatively around the house, walking barefoot into Rémi's room late at night, asking him for help with meaningless tasks just to feel his attention again. One evening she places her hand on his thigh during dinner. He quickly stands, knocking over his chair.
Rémi snapping. "Stop it, Marion! This has to stop!" Marion. "You didn't mind before!" Rémi yelling. "I did mind. Every day I've been haunted by it!" She runs to her room, slamming the door. Through the silence, Rémi presses his hands against his temples, breathing heavily. He's unraveling. The next morning he finds her in the garden, sitting in the sun, tears in her eyes. Rémi, gentle but firm. "You have to understand. This can't continue. You need to find your own path. Away from me." Marion, shaking. "But I love you. I don't want anyone else." Rémi, voice cracking. "What we had, it wasn't love. It was something broken, something dangerous. I want you to be free, not trapped in a memory of pain." She stares at him, stunned. Her mouth opens to speak, but nothing comes out. Charlie's suspicion later. Charlie, an old family friend, drops by unannounced. He watches Marion and Rémi closely, noticing the tension. Charlie, half joking. "You two fight like lovers. That's not normal for a father and daughter." Rémi, nervous laugh. "We've been under pressure. It's been a strange year." Charlie, "Strange how?" Rémi, "You know, grief, adolescence, just life." But Charlie doesn't look convinced. His gaze lingers a second too long. That night, Rémi sits Marion down in the living room. No distractions, no escape. "Rémi, you're going back to your father next week, it's been decided." Marion's face turns to ice.
Marion, you're sending me away. Rémi, I'm letting you go. You need space to become who you're meant to be, not someone tangled up in my shadow. She begins to cry, but not in anger this time, in despair. Marion, What if I don't want to become anyone else? Rémi, you will, and someday you'll look back and see this for what it was. She lowers her head. Marion, quietly, will you forget me? Rémi, never. There's a long pause. Then Marion stands, walks over to him and rests her forehead against his chest. He places a hand gently on her shoulder.
No more than that. A goodbye. Scene transition. As Marion packs her bags days later, she looks around the house that had once felt like a dream. Photos, books, a half-finished piano score left by Rémi. No more than that. A goodbye. Scene transition. As Marion packs her bags days later, she looks around the house that had once felt like a dream. Photos, books, a half-finished piano score left by Rémi. Rémi doesn't answer. He just nods once. And with that, she's gone.
The final scene begins on a quiet evening. Rain taps gently against the windows. The house, once filled with tension, feels unusually still. The furniture is partly covered, books packed, shelves half empty. The transition is near. Marion sits alone on the living room floor, a duffel bag by her side, clinging to a childhood photo of her mother, and Rémi. Her fingers trace the image slowly. A mix of nostalgia and loss trembles on her lips. She wipes her tears, but they keep coming. Rémi enters silently. He stops at the doorway watching her. He sees her not just as the complicated young girl who tangled herself around his grief, but as a lost soul trying to hold on to something familiar. He walks over and kneels beside her. Marion, voice cracking. I'm scared. If I lose you, I lose everything. No one knows me the way you do. Rémi, gently, holding her hands. You're not losing me. You're becoming yourself. The hardest part of love, Marion, is knowing when to let go. When love becomes a cage instead of a wing. She looks at him desperate, searching for one reason to stay. One sign that he feels what she feels. Marion, I don't want anyone else. You're the only one who ever saw me. Rémi, fighting tears. I saw you because I needed someone too. We were both drowning and clung to each other. But clinging isn't love, it's fear. He cups her face, brushing away her tears with his thumb.
Rémi, I want to protect you, Marion, but the best way is to let you grow. To find your truth, to make your own mistakes, and to discover the kind of love that lifts you up, not traps you in the past. Marion sobs, nodding slowly, lips trembling. She buries her head in his chest one last time. Not as a lover, not as a daughter, but as someone saying goodbye to a broken version of herself. Marion whispering, will I forget this? Rémi, you'll remember it as a shadow that taught you to chase light. They sit there for a long time. No more words. The next morning, a misty sky stretches over the small bus terminal. Marion steps out of a taxi, her bag slung over her shoulder. Simone, warm but distant, stands beside Rémi, her hand loosely in his. They've said their words already. Marion turns to face him. Her eyes no longer plead. They shine with acceptance, still tinged with sadness, but free from desperation.
Marion, softly. You don't have to worry about me anymore. Rémi, with a bittersweet smile. I always will. The bus arrives. Its engine hums like the beginning of something new. Marion climbs aboard, takes a window seat. Through the glass, she meets Rémi's gaze one last time. They exchange a nod. Not a farewell, but a release. The bus drives off into the mist. Back at home, Rémi sits at the piano staring at the keys in silence. Dust floats in the golden afternoon light. He places his fingers on the keys and begins to play.
A soft, melancholic melody emerges, hesitant at first, then fuller, more certain. It's not the music of regret, it's the sound of healing. As the music plays, the camera lingers on the empty couch, the photo frame Marion left behind. The piano lid lifting slightly from the vibration. Life stirs again.